Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of China Manufacturing Decoded, our podcast, where we look at everything that impacts manufacturing and also people who buy products or parts from China. And today we are getting back to the topic of logistics, moving products, and specifically to the US. And today, Marshall Taplits is with me, and he was with us in two previous episodes. Episode 78, where we looked at all the issues that were plaguing the U.S. supply chain. Not only the vessels, but the ports and moving the products into the country and so on and so forth. And Marshall gave us a pretty good overview of that. And then in episode 83, Marshall came back and covered the major trends for e-commerce companies. So a little bit of background. So I've known Marshall for years. He was living in Shenzhen like me for a long time. And he's been involved in the e-commerce in general and working in the software industry also before that, specifically for buyers and to manage manufacturing. So he knows this general industry quite well. But maybe you can do a self-intro, Marshall. Tell us a little bit about what you do now.
Sure. Thanks, Renaud. Always good to catch up. And thanks for having me on the show again. So as Renaud mentioned, my name's Marshall, and I was living in Shenzhen for 17 years before moving back just as COVID hit to the US. And while I was in China, I was doing e-commerce and warehouses were one of our largest issues. So when we moved back to the US, we started a warehouse. So we're running a 3PL warehouse called Ship It Done. And that's all one word, Ship It Done. And so we handle Amazon sellers, we handle B2B, Shopify, crowdfunding, and all that. And one thing that came out of doing that business as well is the need in the marketplace for a better WMS system, a warehouse management system that customers can log into and have a portal and see their inventory and handle billing and all that. And so we wound up self-developing one, which now we're going to be spinning off as a freemium product called 3PL Max. So if anybody's interested in a warehouse management system that's free, coming online in about a month or so, just go to 3plmax.com and sign up. But yeah, these are the two projects that we've been working on.
All right. So you've developed something that you are going to use yourself to manage your warehouse, and is that the case? And then you also make it accessible to other companies as a web-based sort of software?
That's exactly right. What we noticed is that the systems available are just not in tune with the actual processes that small and medium-sized companies need to do, and especially like if you're doing Amazon FBA versus you're doing Shopify fulfillment versus you're doing a pallet delivery or a cross-docking. The systems just don't have the proper business flows, and so we built something that does. And yes, we're going to make it available for free. There are upgrades and things that you can pay for, but the basic system, will be free. And we think, by creating that network over time of people using a similar software with the same mentality, we can really improve the efficiencies here.
Nice. So we'll leave a link in the show notes. What was the name again? 3PL?
3PL Max.
Max. Okay. All right.
.com.
Cool.
I appreciate the opportunity to plug that. We're really excited about it.
Sure. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. So today, as I mentioned, this is an update on the logistics situation, specifically in the US. And we're going to look at it in three time ranges. So first is like right now, what is the situation? And we'll look, what about the rest of the year? What does it look like? And then with all the changes in the industry and investments and so on, what does it look like maybe 3 years from now, right? So first, what's going on now? Because I've read some contradictory things. It's summer, so there's a lot of products for Christmas that are getting shipped now. So usually it's peak season. But at the same time, I see that demand for freight in the US at least is down by 40%
Right.
relative to the peak when it was the worst with the highest rates. And, and at the same time, you have sort of a looming economic recession, or maybe, let's just say a downturn or a slowdown. And we see that some big retailers are pulling back some orders. What's going on? And also, when it comes to the ports and moving all the containers out of the ports and into the rest of the country, have things gotten better since we talked about it last year? What have you seen on your side?
Okay, so great question. So I'm going to try to answer this specifically from my personal experience running a warehouse, as opposed to giving every opinion from what I've read, because I think
right.
the whole idea is what we're seeing. So what we're seeing is that the volume is picking up. We are getting busier and busier at the warehouse in terms of storage. In fact, we've had a 3 times increase in the amount of storage from our customers. Wow. With really only like a 10% increase in the customer base. So people definitely have stock. It seems that Amazon is tightening again. I didn't get all the information yet, but one of our customers was planning on sending in. They had 5 full trucks, 53-foot trailers of a product, and I think they expected most of that to go into Amazon, and only a little bit was able to. And they said there were some new tweaks to their account. So I don't know if that's systemic or if it's just their account. But most interestingly is we're seeing a lot of new drivers. The drivers that used to come delivering trucks and containers were usually the same people or people who have been driving for a while. And now it's like 70% people who, can't even back in a truck. Now that is good and bad. The good news is that there are people coming online, labor market seems to be sorting itself out, and people are moving things again. But, everything is still operating much slower. And I'll give you just an easy example. Our UPS driver, he comes at 11 and he comes at 4. 11 a.m. is the drop off, 4 p.m. is the pickup, and the guy is always on time. It's amazing. But when he's on holiday or vacation, as they say here, the guy comes at 12:30 and he picks up at 5. And the only difference is he's not as efficient in his route, right? He hasn't been doing it as long. And using that as an example, I can only imagine what's happening with all these trucks and containers coming in and all these new people that are coming online and are online, but they just don't know the systems. They don't have the efficiencies. If backing into our warehouse takes 4 or 5 tries as opposed to 1, and you extrapolate that through the whole supply chain, I still think we're operating at a much lower efficiency overall. And in terms of the cost, we're definitely still seeing extremely high costs related to or compared to before the pandemic and before all the recent issues with the war in Europe and all that. So I think that I tried to think back before COVID. I would have expected to be able to put a container from China to Los Angeles for $2,000, $2,000 and it took 3-4 weeks, and then to truck it to New York would have costed $1,800. And our biggest concern was, should we be looking at Vietnam instead of China? Try to save something on the labor. But now I think the problems are much larger in the sense that the freight rates are maybe it went from $30,000 a container back down to 15 or 20, but that's still way higher than 2. And I don't think it's going back there. And I think that, there's enough things going on in the world that's going to keep the pressure on oil and gas and all that And at the end of the day, what moves these containers across the ocean, is diesel.
Yeah.
And so as long as energy is going to be a risk for the economy as a whole, and the people, then I think this is going to remain a problem. And it's and China is just such a great place to manufacture in general. I mean, I haven't been there with all the COVID things going on, but you can't just create a new China. So we have to learn how to live with this and stabilize the chains as much as we can.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so with nearly the same client base, you have a lot more products. So people might have gathered some stock, but maybe that means also maybe that demand went down, with people maybe worrying about the economy and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of maybes here for sure, but there have been news about Walmart and others, canceling orders. And of course, at the other end of the chain, the manufacturers get stuck with that, those unsold goods, and is really paying for it. So this is coming again, it seems, like it does every time there's a downturn, and like they did really big time in early 2020, of course.
Yeah.
What about the ease of getting containers into the U.S. ports and getting these goods out of the ports? Has it improved since last time we talked? Or
I think it's improved, but when I say improved, I think it just became 2 weeks longer than it used to be, and that's the new norm. And if you plan that in, then it's okay. I mean, I don't think things are getting completely blocked up anymore. I mean, all our customers are having their products delivered. But it is taking on average 2 weeks more. So if it was going to take 5 weeks, for example, to the East Coast from China, now it's going to take 7 weeks. And I don't know if that's a delay in departure, or if it's a delay in our port here, or if it's just sitting until a drayage guy comes and picks it up. I don't know, but it's taking 2 weeks longer. And I think your point about the demand is interesting, because on one hand, we have too much of all the stuff we don't need, and you can go into Target and Walmart and everything's still on sale. So that's interesting, but then the things that you want are not available. Like I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need to buy a minivan. And so I was thinking of trading in my Explorer and going to get a minivan, and I'd like a hybrid minivan. But anyway, bottom line is you can go across the entire country, and there is one red Chrysler Pacifica hybrid in the entire country, and I have to get a red one because that's my wife's rule.
Wow.
So, and they're not taking orders, and they don't know when more are coming. The same thing is going on for transformers, like electrician that was working with us. He's having trouble getting parts, things that are backed up, 3-6 months. We are looking to expand our building in the back, and they said it used to be like a 4-month lead time, but he said it's 8 to 12 months now, because just getting the steel and getting all the parts for the building, for the steel building to put it together.
Right.
The solar panel industry is, we have one solar customer, and they've been having a nightmare of a time getting things imported in order to make solar panels in Germany, which then get exported to the US. So, again, it's like, is it getting better? It's better than it was, but everything is creaking along for all the important things.
Right. It's quite erratic, yes. Well,
erratic.
Cars are, that's related probably in good part with the semiconductor manufacturing issues, the big shortages. And if it's a hybrid or fully electrical vehicle, it might be a very difficult transition. Maybe like Volkswagen is having a lot of issues, and they're delaying everything because of software that they want to rewrite sort of from scratch for EVs rather than combustion engine cars.
Yep.
And they've delayed the launch of a number of models by like 2 or 3 years. It's amazing. So cars are a little bit of a special case, but yes, what you said rings true. Of course, I see that quite a bit. There's a lot of components and materials that are, much more expensive than they used to be, and or in severe shortage, right? So that's the world of 2022, I guess, and 2021, and I don't really see an end to this in the next few months for sure. What about the changes in legislation for truckers in California? Have you heard about that?
I don't know that much about it, to be honest. I should read more, but I know that there was an issue over the age of the truck, and then there was over how many hours you can drive, and then it's over whether it's an independent contractor or a full employee, and these are big variables, right? That drastically affect the way things work. So stability is good, flexibility is good. And California being, I don't know if it's the largest, but pretty sure it's the largest port now. A lot of things have been moving more to the East Coast, so it's hard to see what's the largest and not the largest anymore as things move around. But California is so important to the U.S. I mean, all the standards for the whole country for the environmental stuff usually get done in California, and then most freight has to pass through California in one form or another. And so, whatever California says is almost what the whole U.S. has to do to a certain extent. So, if they're going to be requiring that everyone is a full employee, for example, that's going to add a tremendous cost structure to the industry. But I still think that gas and diesel cost is really the key, because like right now, for example, and the U.S. has been always lucky. We've had relatively inexpensive energy compared to a lot of places, and the diesel price is up to like $6.20 a gallon here now, and that's not even in California; it's higher there. So it used to be $2. $1.99, and when I was growing up, it was like 60 cents. So I think this is a real adjustment, that just energy is more expensive now. I don't think that trend is going away. So if you really want to project out prices, I think that with the dollar strong right now and our prices are already at almost all-time highs, if there was any issue that made the dollar go down relative to other currencies, that could be a huge spike. And it's a big expense for people in the U.S. to fill up their tank. I was talking with one of the truckers, and he said he's spending $1,200 per day to keep his truck running. And that's horrible. They're used to 400, and so a lot of independent truckers are considering going back and working for larger trucking lines, which can help a little bit, but it can also dry up the spot market and make the supply less for trucks, or less available. Sorry. So there's a lot of variables here that have to be monitored, and it's just not a straight shot in terms of predicting at this point.
Right. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, so there's a situation now. Let's look at the rest of the year, because that's what a lot of people are wondering about, right? And then I came on this this article from the Journal of Commerce, right, joc.com, a bit more than a month ago, but they were saying that port congestion will get worse before it gets better, and that everybody was saying that, the carriers, the forwarders, and so on. What do you expect? What do your customers expect? What have you seen something about that, or are you just like, hey, there's so many variables, there's no way to know, right? Because there's contradictory factors. Some of them may be pushing things to be a little bit less fluid than they should be, and some others helping out. So do you have an outlook, or if you were to bet on something, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And nobody wants to have objective proof that they were wrong. So people are hesitant to give their opinion when there's so many variables, but I'll do it. I think the rest of the year is going to be about the same in terms of the US. I think that the energy situation is stable. I think in the US, I think the labor participation is increasing. And I don't know if that's official stat, but it's just my feeling. There's people coming back to work. There's a lot of new truckers that, like I said, they don't really know what they're doing yet, but they will in the next few months. And business, seems to be okay. People will take whatever they can get because there's such a backlog. So I'm going to say that everything's going to be about the same for the rest of the year.
What about for people who want to book a container and who want to, to know that it's going to take whatever, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and then it's going to get on the truck and it's going to arrive on that date. Do you see reliability of forecasts improving, or really would that also be roughly the same?
I think just don't be overly ambitious. You have to buffer in. If you're trying to make Christmas, for example, or you have a set date you're trying to hit that's a must hit, you have to assume a couple weeks delay getting out of China. You have to assume a couple weeks, sitting in the port. And if you tack it all on, give yourself that buffer of 4 to 5 weeks in addition to, the 3 or 4 that you would have normally had. And, it sounds like a lot, but that's what's comfortable now. And if you stick with that, I think you'll be okay.
Right. Well,
I think there's an incentive, like China wants to get stuff out, the US wants to get stuff in, there's, regardless of politics, there's a pretty broad consensus that everyone needs to get back to work, I believe. So from that perspective, I don't think we're going to see any more crazy shutdowns from China in terms of like really not getting the things out of port. I think that's over. And then I think in the US, everyone's pointed in the right direction, at least.
Okay, well, let's look at China because, well, first, the supplier might be 1 or 2 weeks late, which is, let's say, not unheard of, right?
I didn't include that, by the way. Sorry, I didn't include that. That I don't know.
That's on top of the buffer that you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah, plus the shutdown. So right now, as we are recording this July 14th, there's no shutdown of a large area of China, right? They did it a bit in Guangdong in March, and then the area around Shanghai and Jiangsu has really suffered, so it's been very painful. But in the meantime, Guangdong was producing like there was no issue at all. And various areas like Shandong and so on have had no issues. Fujian, most of Zhejiang have had no issues, and production has been going on. So I would tend to agree with you. However, and I think that the big lockdown of Shanghai that I think by now everybody's heard of, and by the way, it's mostly over, and pretty much over. I think that lockdown of Shanghai was a warning sign from Beijing to the local governments that, maybe want to take it easy. Maybe think that, hey, here is Shanghai, it's a bit different. That's the way I kind of read it, because in Shanghai, even in March and April of 2020, there was never really a lockdown in most of Shanghai. People were still going to bars and things like that. So people in Shanghai were always like, it's the rest of the country, but here it's, right. It's so well managed. And then when they started to have some cases, they were still a bit casual about it. And then when Beijing went in, that, they, to their horror, it was way past what they would tolerate. So they imposed a very harsh, very long lockdown, and it's kind of a warning to the other local governments. But do you see it this way?
It's interesting. I mean, just having been out of China for a few years, I haven't kept up on it as much. But one thing that is very interesting to me is just the absolute opposite way that it's being managed, in the U.S. versus China. I mean, here, you don't have masks, you don't have to vaccinate anymore. I mean, you don't even have to test to come into the country as a tourist. So, that's just we're open, and they're not. And I don't know. I mean, maybe they know something that we don't. But it just seems like black and white, approaches. And I'd love to go back to China and visit and see friends and business colleagues, and I lived in China 17 years. I mean, it pains me that I can't go back because there's all these not lockdowns per se, but the quarantine time. It really puts a barrier on being able to go in and out like I used to. So I just hope that there gets to be a happy medium, but it really is stark. The difference between how the U.S. has handled it versus China.
Well, that's true. I mean, I've been over the past 2 months, have traveled through India, some parts of Europe, like Italy, France. No problem. I mean, yeah, they will ask, are you vaccinated? But then apart from that, no PCR test, nothing, no quarantine, no worries, really. No worries. Well, yeah, in Italy, actually, if you take the plane or the train, you have to wear, the equivalent of an N95 or KN95 type of mask. That's it. That's the worst that I have seen, right? That's the worst I have seen. So, and then people tell me, hey, you're going to travel back to the past. Yeah, that's true.
I do have a fundamental belief that, as much as I'm a technologist and I do everything online, but to actually build new business relationships, like going to Guangzhou Fair, going to visit factories, going to, specifically meet with your quality company and go through requirements or, whatever, or going to different countries to check out different sources. And I think, people have got to get back doing what they were doing. Otherwise, the economy is not going to be in a good place. I just think that that movement of labor is so critical to the way our economy functions. I hope it comes back.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with China, there's a lot of our clients haven't seen their suppliers for 2.5 years now or more, and they, communication goes down. Yeah. The little issues, and they balloon into big issues, and then the relationship really turns sour, and they look for another supplier. I mean, it's really, it's really bad. So the third point I wanted to cover with you, is what about 3 years from now? So we're playing, again, just betting a little bit, but when I've been following the news, about logistics, basically all the big lines like Maersk and CGA, CMA, CGM, and all the others, they've been making so much money, right? Costco and so on. And part of that money, they invested in booking new vessels for containers, right? And there's this article in Container News that came out just 3 days ago, and they say, well, for the first time in history, there are more container ships on order than tankers and bulk ships, right? Now, if the rates go down dramatically, I guess some of these orders will get canceled. But if the rates stay roughly where they are today, which is not unlikely at all, there's going to be a lot more vessels on the oceans. So when we just look at shipments from, let's say, from Asia to the US and to Europe, there's going to be a lot of competition. And of course, the container boxes are getting churned out from Chinese factories by the hundreds. So within 1 or 2 years, we're going to be swimming in an ocean of containers. And within 2, 3, 4 years, there'll be so many vessels. Some of them would just be, the old ones will get scrapped, and the new, efficient, huge ones would be in operation. But it's going to be an enormous amount of competition, right? Do you think, again, the energy price will be the main factor? How do you see a world with so much extra shipping capacity?
Yeah, exactly. There's so many variables, but again, I'll do my best. So I think 3 years is tough, but if I push it to 5 years, just to give it a little bit more time, I think there are really fundamental things going on in the world that are changing the way things work. So, like, for example, when Europe had all its different currencies before the year 2000, and then all of a sudden it was the euro, right? It's almost like the reverse of that. There's the dollar standard, and I'm not predicting the end of the world or anything, but I am predicting that different currencies are going to be used more often when you're trading between different pathways of countries. There's going to be higher insurance costs. There's going to be higher energy costs and higher complexity in terms of how relationships and contracts have to go in order to get things from where they're going to where they're trying to get to, where they're coming from and where they're trying to get to. And the point is that it's just going to be like a defragmentation that requires more pieces and more middlemen to help the chain. And in that environment, I think, yes, you'll see downward pressure in terms of the number of containers available and maybe the number of ships available. And, maybe the labor issues will free up and COVID will be a thing of the past, or at least, integrated into the system. But the complexity and the legal and the insurance and all that combined with the extra cost of energy, I think that's really where we're looking at. So, are we ever going to get back to $2,000, on a DDP situation from China to New York and, to California, and then just having one, freight forwarder being able to manage all those pieces? I don't think so. I think it's going to be somebody in the US, contacting another company who's going to be another company, and they each have their thing and their markup and their structure. And I think it's going to be more handoffs, maybe more integrated systems, but it's going to be higher cost structure, I think. And so, yeah, I think it's just going to, maybe if it right now, if it's $20,000 to ship a container, or even 15,000, maybe it'll go to 12 or 10 or 8, but is it ever coming back to 2? I don't think so. And with energy going the wrong way, if the dollar weakens, especially, I think you could really see it easily bouncing back up to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a container. Even if the containers are physically available, the cost to physically move the ships, is going to be a problem going forward for a number of years. I mean, nobody's invested. There's a global problem. Nobody other than China really has invested in their energy infrastructure in a serious way. Europe has done the opposite. The US hasn't built a refinery since the late 1970s. People want to go green, but it's just going to take some time. It's just going to take some time, and I think it's catching up. So it's not a doomsday scenario, but I don't think it's getting better. I think we have a decade or two of digging ourselves out of this.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. At the same time, I was looking at the numbers, the customs data about imports and exports, and Mexico has not gained, as much as we thought, has not gained much at all, actually, for many reasons. But that was quite a surprise. Vietnam, of course, went up quite a bit. They took a lot of business away from China, and other countries like India actually have got some business away from China as well. This is in the data, but I don't see much regionalization, as people say. Moving a lot of the manufacturing very close to the market. I just haven't seen that much. In Europe, it's a little bit more obvious, with places like Turkey and northeastern Europe. Actually, some business was going to Eastern Europe, and until the war in Ukraine, and now they kind of have cold feet. I don't know why, but Northern Africa is picking up. But in terms of volume, it's still quite negligible. When compared with what they buy from Asia. So big question mark here in my mind. But anyway, we'll be back to
just to add on to that real quick. I do see people trying to change their sourcing location and manufacture more local, but I think it's like the green movement, I mean, the goal is there, but it's going to take so much time. And I mean, you and I have both traveled around the world and been in factories. I mean, there's nothing better than a well-run Chinese factory. I mean, they're amazing, at the scale and the size and just the way they get things done and the processes and the people. I mean, China is really amazing for manufacturing. And I think that, that has to be respected in the sense that you can't just copy and paste it back to the US or back to even Mexico or even to India. I mean, they're really good. They can lead the world. Like, we should all learn, how to manufacture again. Really, I mean, but we have to be equally awed, with how capable China is as a manufacturer.
Right. That's true. I mean, they have the drive, they have the manpower, still now with the demographic trends and so on. I mean, they have a lot of manpower willing to work in factories. They're fast. People want to earn money and be more productive, and they've had a lot of subsidies to upgrade and automate their equipment. And so, of course, and maybe the one thing that's hardest to replicate is the depth of the supply chain, all the components over there. So, yeah, not easy. Fully agree with you. Not easy to relocate all that.
So I think it's happening. Sure. I think it's happening, but it's not. It's a multi-decade process, and it's more of like an equalization across the world as opposed to everybody just leaving China.
Oh yeah, right. And you're right. It's like the green movement. It's at this point it's still at the fringes when you look at the big picture, when you look at the data, and let's see in 10 or 20 years, let's see where it is. I mean, there are some good trends, but they need to accelerate a bit. I think we all agree on that. Yep. Right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Marshall. That was a great overview and a great discussion. And hopefully the listeners, maybe see a little bit clearer into the future. But again, these are all wild guesses. And let's see where all this goes. So again, this was Marshall from Ship It Down, shipitdown.com. We'll have the link in the show notes. And thanks so much, Marshall. And talk to you next time.
Thank you, Renaud. I appreciate it. Great show.
Right. Thank you. And bye to the listeners. You'll hear from us next week.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.